Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Over to you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Sure. Hare Krishna. So today's verses, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 16, verses 5 and 6. Chapter 16 is entitled, How Parikshit Received the Age of Kali. So just read the verses, the Sanskrit and the purport, just conscious of time also, and then, invoke the Mangalacharan. So, verse 5. Shonako vacha kasya hetur nijagraha kalim digvijaye nripa nideva chihnatrik shudra koso gamya padahanat tatkatyatam mahabhaga yadi krishna kathashrayam. Translation. Shunaka Rishi inquired, why did Maharaj Parikshit simply punish him, since he was the lowest of the Shudras, having dressed as a king and having struck a cow on the leg? Please describe all these incidents if they relate to the topics of Lord Krishna. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Ki Jai. Shonaka and the rishis were astonished to hear that the pious Maharaj Parikshit simply punished the culprit and did not kill him. This suggests that a pious king like Maharaj Parikshit should have at once killed an offender who wanted to cheat the public by dressing like a king and at the same time daring to insult the purest of the animals, a cow. The rishis in those days, however, could not even imagine that in the advanced days of the age of Kali, the lowest of the Shudras will be elected as administrators and will open organized slaughterhouses for killing cows. Anyway, although hearing about a Shudraka who was a cheat and insulter of a cow was not very interesting to the great rishis, they nevertheless wanted to hear about it to see if the event had any connection with Lord Krishna. They were simply interested in the topics of Lord Krishna, for anything that is dovetailed with the narration of Krishna is worth hearing. There are many topics in the Bhagavatam about sociology, politics, economics, cultural affairs, etc. But all of them are in relation with Krishna, and therefore all of them are worth hearing. Krishna is a purifying ingredient in all matters, regardless of what they are. In the mundane world, everything is impure due to its being a product of the three mundane qualities. The purifying agent, however, is Krishna. So next, verse 6. So Canto 1, Chapter 16, verse 6. Atha vasya patam bhoja makaranda liham satam kimmanye rasadala per ayusho yadasadvyaya. Translation. The devotees of the Lord are accustomed to licking up the honey available from the lotus feet of the Lord. What is the use of topics which simply waste one's valuable life? Purport. Lord Krishna and his devotees are both on the transcendental plane. Therefore, the topics of Lord Krishna and of his pure devotees are equally good. The battle of Kurukshetra is full of politics and diplomacy, but because the topics are related with Lord Krishna, the Bhagavad Gita is therefore adored all over the world. There is no need to eradicate politics, economics, sociology, etc., which are mundane to the mundaners. To a pure devotee who is actually related with the Lord, such mundane things are transcendental if dovetailed with the Lord or with his pure devotees. We have heard and talked about the activities of the Pandavas, and we now are dealing with the topics of Maharaj Parikshit. But because all these topics are related to the Lord Sri Krishna, they are all transcendental, and pure devotees have great interest in hearing them. We have already discussed this matter in connection with the prayers of Bhishma Dev. Our duration of life is not very long, and there is no certainty of when we shall be ordered to leave everything for the next stage. Thus, it is our duty to see that not a moment of our life is wasted in topics which are not related with Lord Krishna. Any topic, however pleasant, is not worth hearing if it is devoid of its relation to Krishna. The spiritual planet, Goloka Vrindavan, the eternal abode of Lord Krishna, is shaped like the well of the lotus flower. Even when the Lord descends to any one of the mundane planets, he does so by manifesting his own abode as it is. Thus, his feet remain always on the same big well of the lotus flower. His feet are also as beautiful as the lotus flower. Therefore, it is said that Lord Krishna has lotus feet. A living being is eternal by constitution. He is, so to speak, in the whirlpool of birth and death due to his contact with material energy. Freed from such material energy, a living entity is liberated and is eligible to return home back to Godhead. Those who want to live forever without changing their material bodies should not waste valuable time with topics other than those relating to Lord Krishna and his devotees. Okay. So just invoke the Mangalacharana prayers. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakkamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamascha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Rugnatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadavaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamascha He Krishna Kurana Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubheva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shabbat ki jai. Jai. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I hope that I think it was a Guru Disciple course, right? That was last week. Hope that went well. Really, exam done also?
Yeah, we'll have the exam soon.
Jai. All the best to everyone who is doing the Guru Disciple exams. So yeah, coming back to the Srimad Bhagavatam. So we are in chapter 16, how Parikshit received the age of Kali. So just to do a small recap of chapter 15. So chapter 15 was entitled, The Pandavas Retire Timely. And in there we heard about Arjun's lamentation, his distress about when Krishna, his best friend, right, the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his best friend, left the planet. How Arjun lost Krishna. And then we heard that as Krishna was departing, then the influence of Kali began to increase. And so Yudhishthira Maharaj and along with him, the other Pandavas, Draupadi, Subhadra, all of them decided that they were going to renounce the world. So Yudhishthira Maharaj first went and then the rest followed him. But Yudhishthira Maharaj left having fulfilled his duties as a king. He made sure that before he retired from the kingly affairs, he made sure that Parikshit Maharaj, who was his grandson, he was placed on the throne of Hastinapur. And so we can see that even at that time when Yudhishthira Maharaj was focusing on just submersing himself in Krishna consciousness, submersing himself to Krishna, he still fulfilled all his duties. And then he left, right? And then he renounced family life, the world. And naturally, when the Pandavas started to retire, then Sutta Goswami moved on to the next topic, which is on Parikshit Maharaj, how he ruled the kingdom and the life situation that he was put in. And then we came in a couple of verses at the start of this chapter, where we hear that Pariksha Maharaj is doing his rounds around the world, right? He owned the whole world. The world was his kingdom. So he was doing his rounds around the world, just making sure everything's going well, keeping everything in check. And what does he see? He sees that there is the master of Kali Yuga, right, disguising himself as a king. And what is he doing? He's hurting the poor legs of a cow and a bull. It was the king's duty to protect the citizens, whether people, animals, insects. Every living entity was meant to be protected by the king. And so Pariksha Maharaj was ready. He was ready to deal strict punishment to Kali. And hearing about this heinous act, right, we see that we take a step back from the actual story narration, and we come to Shaunaka Rishi, who's heading up all the sages of Naimisharanya. And he's going, okay, he's seen this, he's heard about this heinous act, and he's going, tell us more about this. Specifically, if it's Krishna Kathashrayam, if it relates to topics of Lord Krishna or his pure devotees. And that's where we start. That's where we kind of pick up from, right? And specifically, if we go to the last sentence of the translation of verse 5, please describe all these incidents if they relate to the topics of Lord Krishna. Right? And then we come to verse 6, which is naturally follows on, and actually the purports are quite complementary to each other. So we can discuss both together. And I'll just read the whole translation for verse 6. Quote, the devotees of the Lord are accustomed to licking up the honey available from the lotus feet of the Lord. What is the use of topics which simply waste one's valuable life? Unquote. So in Canto 12, there's actually a beautiful narration of a pastime with Markandeya Rishi. Right? He was a great devotee sage of the Lord, so much so that the Lord, as Narayan, right, in the form of Narayan, he gave a benediction to Markandeya Rishi. And Markandeya Rishi was a great, pure devotee. And what did he desire? He knew that the Lord was all-powerful. He knew that the Lord was the supreme controller. But he also knew that the Lord had multiple different energies, multiple different degrees of how he sustains the world, of the creation, whether it's the spiritual or the material world. And so he desired to see the illusory energy of the Lord. Lord, I know you're great, but please just show me how is it that your illusory energy, your Maya energy, your external energy functions. And it's described that Narayan Rishi actually just gave a small smile, right? And then accepted and gave the benediction, tatastu, as we would say. And so some time passed, and Markandeya Rishi was just going about his normal duties. And one day, he was performing his prayers. He was offering his prayers to the Lord. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, the water of devastation starts to flood all the three worlds. Right? At the end of the universe, flooding, right? The Garbhodakshaya ocean completely floods. And so Markandeya Rishi, because of his benedictions that he had from his pure devotion and everything, he was struggling. He was trying to survive, right? I mean, he would have survived, but he was struggling through the ocean. He was struggling through the water. He was just trying to find some land that he could just get onto. And somehow he comes to a small island and he sees that there's a banyan tree on the small island. And with the banyan tree, at the foot of the banyan tree, he sees something special. He sees a small little boy. And it's described, and I'll read the Sanskrit as well as the translation, because it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful three, 4 verses actually. Mahamarakta Shamam Shimad Vadana Pankajam Kambugrivam Mahor Sakkam Sunasam Sundarabhruvam Shwasijattalakabhatam Kambushi Karnadadimam Vidrumadhara Bhaseshach Chonayittasudhasmitam Padmagarbharuna Papkam Hridaya Hasavalokanam Shwasijatpali Samvigna Nimnanabhidalodaram Charvangulubhyam Panibhyam Unniya Charanambujam Mukhe Nithaya Viprendro Dayantam Vismitaha. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 12, Chapter 9, verses 22 to 25. Translation, quote, the infant's dark blue complexion was the color of a flawless emerald. His lotus face shone with a wealth of beauty, and his throat bore marks like the lines on a conch shell. He had a broad chest, a finely shaped nose, beautiful eyebrows, and lovely ears that resembled pomegranate flowers, and that had inner folds like conch shell's spirals. The corners of his eyes were reddish like the well of a lotus, and the effulgence of his coral-like lips slightly reddened the nectarian enchanting smile on his face. As he breathed, his splendid hair trembled, and his deep navel became distorted by the moving folds of skin on his abdomen, which resembled a banyan leaf. And please pay careful attention to the next part. The exalted Brahmana watched with amazement as the infant took hold of one of his lotus feet with his graceful fingers, placed a toe within his mouth, and began to suck, unquote. So here we see that the Lord himself is sucking the nectar of his lotus feet. How much nectar must there be in the Lord's lotus feet that the Lord himself is compelled to suck the nectar? And in the purport of that verse, Sri Prabhupada's disciples actually quote Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, right? Who's describing what the Lord was actually thinking at that time, what he was wondering. So quote from the purport, so many devotees are hankering for the nectar of my lotus feet. Therefore, let me personally experience that nectar, unquote. So this is what the Acharya is saying that the Lord was thinking in this pastime, like, my devotees are hankering. They're greedy for my lotus feet. Let me taste them. Let me see what is there in my lotus feet to taste them. In the Bhagavad Gita, we hear that there's 3 gates to hell, right? Kama, Krodha, and Lobha. What are they? Lust, anger, and greed. Greed, Lobha, right, is one of the gates that leads to hell. And yet the devotees are greedy for the Lord's lotus feet. They're so greedy that the Lord himself is becoming perplexed. What is so sweet about my feet? Usually in this world, if we look at feet, or if we think of feet or somebody's feet, we think like, so gross, right? They'll smell, they'll look ugly, they'll not be well looked after. But here are the devotees who are just hankering for the lotus feet. And so the Lord himself is found sucking the honey from his lotus feet. But actually, the Lord's lotus feet are not ordinary lotus feet. Sorry, the Lord's lotus feet are not ordinary feet like people of this world. Right? It's described that simply by remembering, by thinking about, by meditating on, by hearing about, by serving those lotus feet, one can actually become enlightened in transcendental knowledge. One's heart actually becomes pacified just by that one thing, his lotus feet. Why? Because the lotus feet of the Lord develops detachment within us from all the material things that are going on around us. And we all will have experience of this, right? It's all of us who are devotees, who are stout followers of Krishna, or trying to be at least, aspiring devotees as we call ourselves, sadhakas, we'll all have experience of this, that so many things go wrong in our life, right? Our work might be a constant struggle. Our family might be in disarray. Our living situation might be in the air. Maybe we don't even know where we're going to stay, next week. Maybe next week we're getting kicked out of our house, our flat, whatever it is. But as soon as we approach the Lord with eagerness, with devotion, utsahanishchayatyat, right? With enthusiasm, with confidence, with patience, we immediately feel relaxed. We feel at ease. We feel content. We feel that even though so much is going wrong in our life, actually nothing's going wrong. No, really, there's nothing going wrong. We all have, I'm sure we all have had that experience at some point in our Krishna conscious path. And this taste, this faith, this surrender that we have towards the Lord's lotus feet is actually our greatest asset as a devotee. When we're in the temple room, we can look around and see so many different calibers of devotees, right? Some will see them as enlightened senior devotees, right? Especially the Maharajas or the Srila Prabhupada disciples will consider they're completely in tune with the super soul. Then there's others that we'll see who we're thinking they're senior to us. They're so much more knowledgeable, so much more surrendered. They have so much more faith in Krishna than us. Then there's the peers, those who we develop our friendship with, those who we help on the journey and also take help from. And then we'll also see juniors, right? Those who, yes, we can learn from, we can take inspiration from, but primarily we know our service is to help them in their journey, to help them rise. But when we're looking at all of these devotees, especially when we're looking at the seniors, then we can question, what is it really that's making them senior? And what stops me from becoming their peer? And actually it boils down to one thing and one thing only. Is how much we are tasting the honey of the lotus feet of the Lord. Topics of Lord Krishna are very, very sweet, just like honey. And therefore they're very, very tasty also. The pure devotees, the senior devotees, they're actually only ever interested in topics which are connected with Krishna. And by extension, his pure devotees also. These devotees are described as having vyavasayatmika buddhir, right? Which is that they're one-pointed, they're completely resolute in their purpose of Krishna consciousness. They're not swayed here and there by this thing going on, that thing going on. They're just resolute, they're focused. Yes, this is my goal and this is the path I want to tread. Well, okay, we can say that actually, Bhaj Govindam Das, everything is related to Krishna. We know in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that, the material world, the spiritual world, everything is my energy. So everything is connected to him. So everything is Krishna Katha. We can say that, we can think that. And it's true, right? Because at the end of the day, Krishna's not lying. Everything is his energy. So then what separates, what differentiates the politics, the diplomacy, the drama, the latest news, the romance, the Bollywood songs, the Bollywood movies, all of the stuff that we see on TV? What separates all of that from what we read or hear about in the Vaishnav literatures, in the Vedic literatures like the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Chaitanya Charitamrita? What separates them? I mean, even if we look at, say, like Prabhupada Lilamrita, we can see there's so much suspense, so much drama, so much diplomacy that takes place. We can just take the example of the Juhu temple, right? And the whole fight for the Juhu temple that Prabhupada and his disciples went through. completely action-packed, right? It was, I mean, if devotees decide to make a movie on it, you could make a Bollywood movie, a long 3-hour movie just on that. It'll have action in there, it'll have adventure in there, it'll have a hero in there, it'll have everything in there. So what's the difference? The difference is that what we see on TV, what we see in the Bollywood movies, or anything for that matter, is part of the external energy of the Lord. Whilst those which are from the bona fide literatures, which are related to Krishna, related to Krishna's pure devotees, they're actually part of the internal energy of the Lord. So they're directly related to the Lord. And the pure devotees, the senior devotees who are absorbed in Krishna, they're not interested in any topics that are not directly related to Krishna or his devotees. They're not interested in hearing about the latest gossip. They're not interested in hearing about the latest Bollywood songs. They're not interested in hearing about the latest scandals that we see on the news. The pure devotees, they're always seeking the shelter of the Devi Prakritim, the divine energy or the divine nature of the Lord. And because they're always seeking, they're always after that shelter, they're experiencing and relishing transcendental bliss at every step. The material world is described as having padam padam yat vipadam, right? There's danger at every step. There's distress, there's anxiety at every step. But because the pure devotees, the senior devotees, they're always taking shelter of the Lord, they're always connecting with the Devi Prakritim. They're just enjoying pure bliss. Because they're connecting with the internal energy of the Lord. They're connecting with the internal energy of Krishna. So when we become serious, when we become sincere in our Krishna conscious path, then a question often arises, well, how do I know that I'm advancing in Krishna consciousness, right? An age-old question that probably every devotee has asked at least once to a senior devotee. And we get so many different answers also. But it boils down to really two questions that we have to ask ourselves. For that one question that we ask somebody else, we just have to ask two questions to ourselves. Number one, how much Krishna consciousness am I tasting? When we sit in a Bhagavatam class, are we tasting the honey that's coming out of the speaker's mouth when he's describing Krishna Katha? When we're tying our saris or dhotis, when we're doing some menial service in the temple, then are we tasting and relishing the opportunity to serve the holy dham? Every temple is a holy dham. When we're sitting in japa or performing kirtan, are we valuing that golden opportunity to be able to perform Nam Bhajan, to perform Nam Seva? Are we relishing that opportunity to have Krishna himself manifest in his names, come and dance on our tongues? When we're sitting and reading Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, or all these literatures that we have available, then are we consciously aware of the mercy and the compassion that Krishna, the Acharyas, Srila Prabhupada and his disciples have made available to us? When we look at the association of devotees that we have around us, then are we seeing that actually this is the greatest gift that we have in our life? This human form of life is itself a rare gift, but the human form of life, coupled with the fact that we have devotee association, is the greatest gift that we could have. No mundane relationship, no mundane association can ever compare to it. Are we actually seeing that when we're going about our services, when we're going about our day to day. So the first question is, how much am I tasting the honey of Krishna consciousness? And the second question is, how much time am I wasting in topics which aren't related to the Lord or his pure devotees? When we finish for work for the day, then what's our go-to? Are we going on our phones, go on Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Snapchat, or any other social media platform that's available? When we're sitting and eating, are we randomly scrolling through YouTube trying to find some video to watch? Usually from some millionaire who does nothing that's of eternal value. When the weekend's coming, then are we thinking, okay, what should I do this weekend? Let me text some friends, let me just call some friends and find out if we can hang out together, go to the restaurant, go to the cinema, have some gossip. The thing is that we all have different tastes. And because of those different tastes, we do so many different things in our life, right? We have so many different personality traits. We have so many different things that attract each of us. What attracts me will attract Girtika Mataji differently, will attract Aishwarya differently, will attract all of us on this call in different ways. Some like drama, some like comedy, some like relationships, some like music, some like action. And it's because of all these different tastes that we actually have so much variety in our life as well. Otherwise, we just get bored, right? But the thing is that most of the variety that we invite into our life is actually entangling us. It's actually binding us more and more. It's actually feeding our conditioned natures. But there's a very simple and easy process which takes our desire for variety from being binding to being liberating. And that's when the same tastes that we have, right? Whether it's comedy, whether it's action, whether it's relationships, whether it's food. But when we take all of that, all of those tastes, different tastes, different desires for variety that we have, and dovetail them to the Lord and his devotees. When we do that, then that variety that we want in our life can free us. And Prabhupada, for this reason, gives us the example of the prayers of Bhishmadev, which are from the earlier chapters of this canto. Right? We go through the pastime of Mahabharata, this part of the Bhishmadev prayers. And we see there's so many different flavors, so many different tastes available there. If you like action, then you've got the Kurukshetra war, you've got the battle between the Pandavas and all the different personalities that exist. If you like drama, then let's be honest, what better drama is there than some family feud, right? Two brothers going at it for a piece of land, right? The conflict between the Pandavas and the Kauravas. If you like relationships, then you have the emotional journey that the Pandavas and Krishna take, like when Krishna left Hastinapur, or the Dwarkavasis, when Krishna was entering Dwarka. If you like romance, then you've got so many Swayamvaras that take place in the Mahabharata pastimes, right? So many marriages like Draupadi or Rukmani. So whatever or wherever our tastes lie, we can find them in the pages of the literatures. But specifically, we should look for that in the association of devotees. And to the degree that we make it a point to keep going to that form of honey, which is available at the lotus feet of the Lord, to that degree we'll taste the nectarian honey. We'll taste and experience that bliss and happiness that the senior, the pure devotees do. And the Lord's very merciful for us, right? In the Bhagavad Gita, it says, Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tattvata tyaktva deham punar janma neti ma'ameti so Arjuna. This is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 9, right? Translation. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Unquote. So by learning about, by hearing, by meditating, by thinking, and constantly remembering the pastimes of the Lord, we can actually free ourselves from the circle of birth and death. And we can see that there's so much so-called material variety available in all these literatures. But because they are connected with Krishna and Krishna's devotees directly, because they're associated to Krishna's appearance, Krishna's activities directly, they're transcendental. So not only can we satisfy our desire, our need for variety, our need for different flavors in life, our thirst for different genres of entertainment, but by hearing, by going to the Vaishnav literatures, by going to the literatures that describe the Lord and his pastimes and his devotees, we can also attain eternal life. And actually, eternal life can only exist in Krishna consciousness. Because somebody who has material consciousness, then we know they're forced to actually give it up at the time of death. Because the laws of karma have to act. They have to suffer or enjoy the results of their activities. But because they've chased after so many different things which aren't connected to Krishna, then even in their next life, they'll take birth and chase after the same things. But for one who is in Krishna consciousness, if they are vyavasayatmika, right? If they are resolute, determined, fully fixed on being a devotee or trying to be a devotee, always trying and endeavoring to engage in the 9 processes of devotional service, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, etc., then they get eternal life. Living forever is guaranteed, not by me, but by Krishna. And that's why Prabhupada at the end of this purport for verse 6, he says, I quote, "Those who want to live forever without changing their material bodies should not waste valuable time with topics other than those relating to Lord Krishna and his devotees." Unquote. And this is what associating with devotees actually means, right? It's not to come together to have some laughs, have some talk, have some chit chat, talk about work, talk about family, talk about gossip here and there. Krishna says that actually my devotees enjoy transcendental bliss. They enjoy great satisfaction in just conversing about me, in enlightening one another about me. And that's what devotee association means. Coming together to talk about Krishna, coming together to talk about Krishna's pure devotees. And we can see that that's what the sages of Naimisharanya wanted to do. They weren't gathering and hearing stories and then, oh, you know, there's this master of Kali who's just trying to kill some animals. Let us hear, you know, let's hear the gossip about what's going on. So then we can share it with somebody else and talk about, you know, there's this guy who was so bad and then this is how the king punished him. No. They wanted to hear the topics because they were related to Krishna Katha. And that's the only thing they cared about. If this relates to Krishna Katha, tell me. If it doesn't, move on. So dear devotees, we should also learn. We should not waste our time in mundane topics. We should learn to utilize our time to associate with each other in a way which enlivens the heart, to become more Krishna conscious, to go to Krishna more, to think of Krishna more. See, every society, every community in the world talks about events, talks about people, back chats about people. This person did that person did this person said this, that person said that. But as devotees, we should consciously make an effort to go, I don't want to get engaged in this. I don't want to engage in these conversations. Instead, what we should do in devotee circles is talk about our services, talk about our sadhana, our bhajan, talk about the reading, the hearing that we're doing. We should share our reflections, our realizations. We should find ways to serve each other, to enlighten each other in Krishna consciousness. And it only takes one person in the group to do that. Because if one person does it, then it's an inspiration for the rest of the group. See, as devotees, we've heard so many different times that we shouldn't perform ninda, we shouldn't perform, backbiting or talk badly about people, criticize, etc., etc. But we end up doing it because we end up going with our lower natures. But once we come into contact or in the association of one devotee who is like always talking about Krishna Katha, even if you're trying to go down a negative slope, intentionally even, but as soon as they bring up Krishna, it's like, oh, yeah, I should talk about Krishna too. I should talk about my reading. I should talk about what I want to share about Krishna Katha. So instead of bringing all these mundane things that we have going on all around us, all the material energy pulls us in so many different directions. We should do our best to always try and bring Krishna into the conversations, to always try and enlighten one another. Because like I said before, there's no mundane relationship, there is no mundane association that can compare to devotee association. But that can only happen and that can only be felt and realized if our devotee association is enlivening and enlightening us in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, actually what we're doing is just having the same mundane relationships, just with somebody who happens to be a devotee. So to summarize, we started off talking about this pastime with Markandeya Rishi, right? Where and how the Lord's lotus feet are so full of nectar that the Lord himself was bewildered about the nectar available as lotus feet and decided, let me have a taste. Let me taste that honey. And then we spoke about how we can measure our progress in Krishna consciousness. And what is that measure? It's the increasing taste in tasting the nectar, the honey of Krishna consciousness. And with it, the decrease in the taste of the mundane, flickering tastes of the world. And then we spoke about this need, this desire, this innate desire within us of wanting variety in our life, wanting to taste, experience different things, touch different things, see different places. But how all of that binds us if it's not directly related to the Lord. But if it's directly related to the Lord, if we bring Krishna in, if we bring Krishna's pure devotees in, if that same variety can liberate us. And then we ended up about talking about how Krishna consciousness is the only path to eternal life. And as devotees, if we really desire to live eternally, and I'll put my hand up, eternally with Krishna, then we need to not waste our time. Not waste our time in talking about mundane things that aren't directly connected to Krishna. We need to start focusing on making it a conscious effort in our life to think about, to engage, to discuss, and focus on things which are connected to Krishna and Krishna's devotees. Focus on helping one another, encouraging one another, and inspiring one another to come closer to Krishna. And that is what real association is about. It's about engaging in the 9 folds or 9 limbs of devotional service in the association of devotees to enliven and enlighten one another in Krishna consciousness. So Linda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for this wonderful session. It was really nectarian, especially what Markanda Rishi saw under the banyan tree. And I hope everybody could see that as well. It's a wonderful pastime. Prabhuji, Markanda Rishi did know. I mean, he was self-realized, and he, you know the question. I mean, if I desired, I mean, I'm not self-realized. I don't know. So if I say, oh, Krishna, and say, okay, show me Maya, how does it work and things, it is understandable, hopefully. I'm not trying to escape it. But Markanda Muni was really a self-realized soul. And why did he want to see the illusionary energy and how it works? What's the point?
Pure devotees, Mataji, pure devotees. So I'll read out the purport actually, because the purport perfectly answers this. Yeah. So this is Canto 12, Chapter 9, Verse 7. The purport. So from the second line, according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the Supreme Lord smiled ruefully. If you remember, I mentioned that Naranarayan Rishi smiled. Right? He smiled ruefully because he prefers that his pure devotees stay away from his illusory energy. Curiosity to see the illusory energy of the Lord sometimes develops into sinful material desire. Nonetheless, to please his devotees, Markandeya, the Lord granted his request, just as a father who cannot convince his son to give up pursuing a harmful desire may let him experience some painful reaction so that he will then voluntarily desist. So here, what's being explained is that in the life of a pure devotee, in the hearts of a pure devotee, yes, he's a pure devotee. He knows full well how everything functions, but curiosity attracts even the pure devotees from something that may well not be, right, directly pleasing to Krishna. And that's why there's a phrase, or at least I've many times used the phrase even before Krishna consciousness, curiosity kills the cat, right? And I always shortened it to just pure, simple curiosity kills, right? I mean, I never thought it would come into context, in Vaishnava literature, but yeah, curiosity is what attracts.
Thank you very much for that clarification. We know curiosity kills now. Any questions or comments by any of the participants, any of the devotees in this group? Before we go on to that, let us welcome Aishwarya Mahajan. Mataji has joined us for the first time in this group. We are really grateful. And we also have Shreya with us. Let us all unmute and chant 3 Haribols for them. Haribol. Haribol.
Haribol. Haribol.
Haribol. In and enjoying this nectar today. Any questions, comments? Yes, Madhuka Mataji. Any questions?
Hare Krishna Mataji. I'm happy to join you after a long time. But always, missed you. But, I was traveling and the time difference, and so that I can't join regularly. But I really miss all the sessions and everything. And Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I just want to know something about this mundane talk and mundane things. like in the temple also, after we gather for some program and some special festival also, after all these functions over and we are having prasadam and all that, we are around with our devotee friends and all. We naturally start talking not only about festival but mundane things also, not gossiping about anyone or like anything, but we just normal mundane talk that this happened to me, I got late because of this is happening, this. So is it not natural, and it is very difficult to stay away from mundane talks all the time and talk about Krishna and Krishna Katha, even though we love it so much because we are in this material world, isn't it?
Hare Krishna. Yeah, no, thank you for question and comment as well. And yeah, it's definitely difficult. But see, this comes down to our taste also, right? Because the more we taste Krishna Katha, the more we want to just focus on Krishna Katha. Because naturally, like, okay, things that happen to us, happen to our body or whatever. Srila Prabhupada is a great example of this. He had heart attacks on the Jaladuta. The only reason why we know he had heart attacks is because he mentioned it once, casually.
Oh.
He mentioned it casually once to his disciples, and that's how we knew he had heart attacks on the Jaladuta. But we can put that in perspective. Here's a 69-year-old man who's traveling across the ocean on a cargo ship. For who? For all of us. He didn't go around going, oh, you know, I'm 69 years old. I had 2 heart attacks on the Jaladuta. I could have died at any moment. He didn't do any of that because his focus was on preaching Krishna consciousness. His focus was on spreading Krishna's glories. But that's because he had that level of taste. So naturally, yeah, when we're with friends, when we're with, you know, others, even in devotee circles, naturally, yeah, we talk about mundane things, and it's good, right? In the sense that we're not criticizing, as you were saying, we're not talking gossip or other people. There's different levels of conversations that we can have. Criticizing is one of the worst. Having mundane, like casual conversations, one in the material world where not all of us are pure devotees, it's necessary to build relationships, right? Because if I didn't ask you, how are you, what's going on in your life, and you didn't tell me, then we don't feel connected.
Yeah.
But if I ask, how are you doing, what's going on, oh, this happened, oh, you know, like showing sympathy, empathy, etc., then you feel that a relationship is developing, and so you feel comfortable doing the 6 loving exchanges, right? And 2 of them is related to revealing the mind in confidence. If you didn't know I cared about you, you wouldn't want to share. And that's important for Krishna consciousness. So you would even see sannyasis, Maharajas. Srila Prabhupada does this a lot. He does ask about how are you doing, what's going on with your life, how's your business going.
Yeah.
But the mood isn't to get engaged in that conversation. The mood is to develop a relationship, develop a closeness and intimacy so that Srila Prabhupada can then take them to higher levels.
Yeah.
And the prime example here is Srila Prabhupada's conversation, I forget the personality, but with the race car driver. Spends a whole hour talking about race cars and the race, blah, 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 focused fully on what the other person wanted and likes. But then he raises the consciousness. Well, what happens if you have an accident and die?
Yeah.
So that's the focus. So yes, you know, ideally, if we can bring Krishna even in those conversations about, oh, I got late, but, you know, I could see that Krishna arranged because if I had left on time, then this person had an accident and this would have, or something, you know, like obviously that isn't good, but yeah, like if we can bring Krishna into it still, that's even better. But if we don't, then we don't need to feel bad per se, because we can see it as, okay, I'm building this relationship with Krishna's devotees with the intent of us developing an intimacy that can help each other in Krishna consciousness.
Yeah.
Sorry, long-winded answer, but I felt inspired to share that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a nice, nicely explained. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, Arya Govind Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam. Nice to see you after a long time, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Likewise, Prabhu.
I just had this question that, okay, Mataji was speaking about gossiping with devotees. So when we are dealing with materialistic people, and we obviously cannot directly preach them or discuss about Krishna's topics or expect them to discuss Krishna topics with us. But how do we do? I mean, like, it is sometimes inevitable to discuss mundane topics. I mean,
Yeah.
how do we do?
Yeah, I'm still learning, Prabhu. I'm still learning. I'm sure you have an answer. You always do. But yeah, no, thank you for the question. I'll just share a few things from my side. And actually, I'll talk about one person who's on the group itself, actually. I'll give their name, but I won't ask them to speak because they asked me not to. But Aishwarya actually is one of my colleagues at work. So yes, so thank you for joining. And the thing, and this is something Kesha Maharaj just shared a lot, actually, Swam Bhagwan Kesha Maharaj. As devotees, our thing is that we want to meet the other person where they're at and then help them rise from there, right? So if somebody is not interested in spirituality at all, if their only goal is, I want to earn money, then as devotees, okay, we're not interested in earning money. And we know that even if they get money, they'll probably end up being sad in the end anyway. But we can think, we have Dhruva Maharaj as an example. His desire was to earn money, right? A kingdom bigger than Brahma. And in that way, we can connect the person to Krishna. If we can talk about Krishna in a direct sense, even if it's not about bhakti. But maybe we can introduce them to Krishna consciousness from friendship. Okay, yeah, you're going through this situation in your life. I'm there, help them out. And we can give them the spiritual support, a bit of material support, but give them spiritual insight, because we know that the root cause of all suffering is because of their lack of relationship with Krishna. But that lack of relationship with Krishna doesn't have to be direct Krishna katha. It can be the love that Krishna gives to his devotees and through his devotees from us to them. So bringing Krishna in our conversations with colleagues, with people on the street, with materialists, it can take many, many different forms. But the basis of it, as Radhanath Maharaj would always say, is also love, right? Because we want to be instruments of Krishna's love. So our mood, if we're approaching them in the mood of serving them, in the mood of being a servant, then they will get attracted. Because once they get attracted to a devotee, then the devotee is only going to do one thing, take them to Krishna. So yeah, building friendship, establishing relationships based on love, trying to find a connect with Krishna consciousness. Yes, we will engage in those mundane conversations, in those materialistic conversations. But again, just like Srila Prabhupada, the aim isn't to just have that conversation. The aim is not necessarily in the conversation itself, but longer term, to connect them back to Krishna, to pull them up from where they're at in their consciousness to a higher consciousness of Krishna consciousness. And if we keep that as our aim, then Krishna works magic through us. Like he does with you already, Prabhu. I know you, Kirtika Mataji can attest to this, I am sure. You do amazing preaching and service in Eldoret. So, the Irish community. And I think you give a Gujarati Sangha as well, if I'm not mistaken.
No, Prabhu. No, I'm a South Indian, basically.
Oh, okay. Somebody in the group does. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm basically in Nakuru, Prabhu, so not in Eldoret, but yeah, we're trying to build a small center here as well. Yes.
You do give a class on this group, so you are there as a mentor as well, Prabhuji.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
It would be nice to hear your reflection, Harigovinda Prabhu, because I know you always have something to share also.
Actually, frankly to speak, I struggle, in the sense, like you said, to be instruments of love, and then to be instruments of affection, and then ultimately to connect them to finally to Krishna is our final goal. But still, how do we do it? We have to use our intelligence, and then we have to use our experience. How do we do it? It's left to us, but through the shastra, through the scriptures, and of course not to use any other mundane methods, but still we can use whatever tools we think it can be used in. But in still, it's a struggle, sometimes to deal with different kinds of people, especially in different walks of life, and then it becomes a challenge. Most of them think that the material problems are definitely the greatest thing in this material world, and then they think that if they solve that problem, they'll be the most happiest people on the earth. But still, the super rich people also unhappy. Yeah. So, but still, yeah, we have to keep trying. By the mercy of Krishna, things will happen. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, solving material problems with spiritual solutions.
Yes.
So yes.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Nice.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Are there any other questions or comments? I just have 2 points. I need clarification on the last sentence of this text 7. Those who want to live forever without changing their material bodies. Our material bodies are always changing, Prabhuji. So why is that mentioned here?
Material bodies are always changing, but we can have spiritual Krishna consciousness that even in this material body, we don't consider ourselves to be part of the body. So if we look at pure devotees, they can go through so much, right? But because their consciousness is elevated beyond their material anxieties, what happens? We can see Jayapadaka Maharaj, his situation in a wheelchair, half paralysis, etc. But his consciousness is so high that he's preaching, like right now he's in UK, or coming to the UK at least, traveling the world in that situation where people would be like, okay, let me just stay in one place. Okay, preaching is my thing, so I'll preach from my local temple. I'm not going to travel the world. We can look at Govindam Maharaj, even in his last days, focused on preaching, spreading the mission. His will was focused on the mission. He was planning everything. Srila Prabhupada on his deathbed, dictating. Can we imagine what Srila Prabhupada was going through in that situation? Like on his deathbed, such an old age, he didn't eat or drink anything for a long, I don't know how many days. And if we just have a pinprick, we're like, for days, Get a plaster, quick. These are the pure devotees who are tasting the real honey from the lotus feet of Krishna.
You're already thinking how difficult tomorrow's Ekadasi will be, Prabhu.
At least the last Ekadashi is gone, right? The dangerous one.
Yes.
Yes. But yeah.
So thank you, Prabhuji, for that answer. I know I'm rushing to the next point because time is not on our side. Again to Markanda Rishi, and it was okay for me to feel why did he ask for such a thing, but I feel I do the same. Actually, my desires are not as pure as his, or it's not so elevated. Oh, how does your material energy work? I ask for mundane things. I mean, that Krishna would be laughing and saying, is this it? Is this what you are really asking for? I mean, for a few things that would help in sense gratification, probably. So it wasn't, I shouldn't have asked that question, is what I feel. That because I do the same. I do the same. I ask Krishna for mundane things.
No, the fact that it's related to Krishna is still good. It's better than not going to Krishna and having material desires. We should at least come to Krishna. That's the first step.
Okay. So on that note, and there being no questions, can I request Priya Govind Prabhu? Is it possible for you to close the session? Hare Krishna. Is your internet allowing you to do that? Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the wonderful association you have given us and a very nice class. So we do appreciate. On behalf of ISKCON Eldoret, I would like everyone to unmute themselves and chant one round of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra for the glorification of His grace, Bhaja Govindam Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna
Hare
Krishna,
Hare
Krishna,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Rama,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Hare
Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Grace Bhaja Govindam Prabhuji ki
Jai.
Jai.
ISKCON
Gaura
Eldrat ki
Hari Preman.
Jai.
Jai.
Jai Jai.
Panchakapatirupyascha kripa sindhuve cha patitanam pavnebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Tuketa Vaishnavrinda ki Jai.
Jai. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Govinda Prabhuji, why did you ask us to change the sequence? Is there a connection or should we be doing it that way?
Oh, no. I just asked because I felt like reading today. That's okay. No. It's just.
Okay, thank you so much. Hare
Yes.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.